This is module 2. In this module, we are going to describe or discuss in brief about extratextual annotation. Now, in brief, this module will explain the nature and goal of extratextual annotation and also argues that a corpus which is annotated at the extratextual level can be much more useful both in linguistic and extralinguistic research and activities. So these two arguments are actually the central theme of this module, and to substantiate these two arguments, we are going to discuss here what is extratextual annotation, different types of extratextual annotation, the file name, a gateway of extratextual annotation, the text category annotation, subject category annotation, title of text annotation, and the header file documentary safeguard in annotation. These things are so technical in nature that until and unless somebody is very much integrated with the processing and utilizations of language corpora, may not find interesting, because a lot of technicalities, a lot of computation and linguistics areas are involved into it. So it is not so much interesting, but highly important for developing annotated corpora. We argue that, as we have noted, that a corpus can be, as proposed by Lynch, can have two types of information. One is representation, another is interpretative. So what happens? According to Lynch, while representational information is the actual form of a language that consists of letters, word, phrases, and other elements, on the other hand, interpretative information is something which is added to the basic text elements by a human text annotator who has enough linguistic knowledge of the language he is handling. We are actually further expanding the argument proposed by Lynch. What we say that corpus can be annotated two ways. In one part, we have additional additive interpretative information, which is called extratextual information, which are not available inside the text. So that extratextual information is supposed to come from outside. Now, how those information should be collected and should be represented, this is the basic part of the present module. In the next module, we will be discussing about the intratextual annotation, where the only textual components should be taken into consideration and will be defined in which way we can be done. So what happens? If we look at the corpus, we find two types of information. One is extratextual components. The other is textual components. Now let us understand what are the textual components. Just in a simple way, if you look at the data or a corpus text, what we find that there are a lot of interpretative elements also. And those interpretative elements are basically linguistic elements or paralinguistic elements. If we broadly divide those textual components in a text, we are finding out these are basically interpretive, and that needs to be interpreted. We need to interpret the word to understand the meaning. We need to structure. We need to do interpretation of the sounds, segments to understand the sounds of the words or letters. we need to interpret the syntax to understand the sentence structure. So these are interpretative elements in the text. So those interpretative elements can also be broadly divided into two types. At one type, they are called purely linguistic items or elements, like words, characters, phrases, sentences, clauses, and other things, other textual elements which are used there. These are called linguistic elements. But at the same time, you can find out large amount of non-linguistic elements also in a text. Suppose tables, images, pictures, flowcharts, graphs, and many other visual elements also come into text. So what happens? These are normally known as paralinguistic elements. So what happens? In interpretative text, interpretative elements, we can broadly divide them, one into linguistic elements, another is the paralinguistic elements. So all those things need to be interpreted, so they are actually interpretative components. The other part is known as documentative elements, which are basically extratextual elements. What are those? In a corpus, we put a text file. We give a file name of a text that was not there within the text. So this is a documentative part. This is an additional part. Or we provide a header file to the name. This is a file name. It's a new header file which carries a lot of metadata information. So this is called header file or documentative elements. So in the text file category, we find the text file name. And in the documentative other header file category, we get the metadata. So these are not directly linked to the original interpretative or textual components of the corpus. Rather, they are extratextual components which helps us to handle those data, to process those data, to retrieve the information, textual elements from the data. So these are basically gateways. These are basically the external elements which helps us to handle the texts properly. So we find there are extratextual components and intertextual components. So thus the whole structure, the figure given here about the corpus, annotated corpus, we found the structure that. So this figure actually represents what are the things that are available in an annotated corpus. Now early works, now we are referring to the early works of extratextual annotation. At first, the first two notable encoding projects that completed in 1977 and 1981 are the Brown corpus and the Love corpus. They are annotated. So these two corpora, each one consisting certain 1 million lines of words, and these two texts also carried extratextual annotation as well as intertextual annotation. So these two corpora followed, particularly the Longman-Lancaster corpus and Helsinki corpus following the COCOA reference model. So we can find out how those COCOA information was embedded into the text and what kind of notation or standard conventions they used. So what happened? They uniformly, all those texts were encoded with COCOA standard, both for intertextual and extratextual, and they used normally the angle brackets to annotate the text. Two rules are followed at the time. A code symbolizing the name of a particular variable was used, and a string or set of strings that symbolizes that variable. So they used a code that symbolizes the name of a particular variable and a string that symbolizes the variable. Just here I can give you, for example, the code A could be used to refer to the variable, says A stands for author. So whenever the code A is used within angle brackets, for our purpose or understanding, it means that this particular character which is put within angle brackets stands for author. Thus, COCOA had a very large list of annotations guidelines or annotation coding systems, that A for say the author, then A colon space the name of the author Charles Dickens, or A name of the author Homer, or A colon space name of the author Shakespeare. So this A and the Shakespeare within angle brackets, it categorically said that it actually, this is the author name and it is the name of the author. That was used maximally. We can find out that Helsinki corpus was one of the earlier corpora, or earlier corpus used for the COCOA annotation guidelines. And we can give here a full list, not full list exactly. We have got a, if you refer to the table number 1, that COCOA format of the header line, you can find out they have unique codes for and a short descriptive codes for that. There is specific code for text identifier, code for name of the text, author name, subject and period, date of composition, date of the manuscript, relevance of the text, dialect, verse or the prose, text type, foreign or original, then written or spoken, sex of the author, age of the author, author's social status, audience's description, participants of the relationship, interactive or non-interactive type of text, formal or informal, prototypical text category, and the sample. So they had a large list of encoding mechanisms, unique encoding types, which has been followed for COCOA. So after that, many texts after Brown corpus or Love corpus, we know that many texts have been encoded in that manner. So types, now we come to the next issue, the types of external annotation. What are the types of external annotation we can add? So this is perhaps a new set of information we are going to provide for extratextual annotation. Here we get broadly two types. One is a text file name, a gateway. So what happens? We need to give a specific file name for a particular text, and that file name should be given in such a manner that title itself directly refers us or directs us to the content of the texts. So this is a part of the documentation. So it is not that we can give an arbitrary name. So there should be a uniform methodology, uniform strategy or method to identify the text file name. What we did in cases of TDL project for the corpus, we had a file name in a very uniform manner in the following order. So as I have already mentioned, the text category type was represented in the file name. The subject category of the text is also represented in the file name. The title of the text is represented in the file name, and number of text file names are also represented in the file name. It also possible that in cases of multilingual frame, we need to add another information to identify to which language it belongs to. So in such we can do that. So if you look at the diagram given here or the format given here, where you can find out that we have used a kind of encoding frame of 12 characters, where each character stands for a particular information or a particular set of information or annotation represented in part. So this is a kind of text file name of documentative annotations, as I have already mentioned, LTFCKLBL.005. If you look at this file name, is a unique file name. So this file name actually in total contains 12 characters. The first two characters, that's LT, stands for the abbreviated code of the text category literature. The next two characters, FC, constitute the subject category, subcategory rather, fiction. The last four characters, KLBL, constitute the code of the title of the source text wherefrom the sample is collected. So here you can find out in the, if you refer to the table 2, you can find out how the 6 text categories and their codes are used in the TDL corpus. We have used LT stands for literature text, SS stands for social science text, NS stands for natural science text, CC stands for commerce texts, and MM stands for mass media texts, and OR stands for other types of texts. So this table gives us a very clear idea how different kinds of texts can be classified. Similarly, for other domains also, this can be very systematically used to classify the text. Now, if you look at the broad text category, we find that if you can have a text category as a head type, you can have SC1, SC2, SC3, SC4. I mean, scientific texts of several different types. Then subject category. Then within subject category 1, you can have, say, literary text. In subject category 2, you can have social science text. In subject category 3, you can natural science text. So, and those has several subcategories. That literature, you can have fiction, stories, essays, and plays. SS category, political science, history, education. So, it is basically a schematic representations or classifications of the texts coming into the corpus. The basic goal is that easy accessibility to the and reaching to the actual target of the particular text. If there is millions of separate files stored into the computer and we need to access the appropriate text files whenever required, we need a very elegant system of identifying the file names, besides which contain appropriate texts. Then we have got subject category annotation. So once the text category identified, immediately it becomes the second important task becomes the subject category identifications. If you look at the table number 3 here presented, we got nearly 85 different subject categories which are broadly classified into the 12 major categories, 7 major categories that included into the list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 6 major categories in the list. You can find out that there are around 80 plus different subjects which have got different unique code for each subject category so that they can be aligned to the particular kind of text category. Suppose if I say alphabetically sorted out, AC stands for accountancy. So accountancy is a particular subject. It should invariably go into the category like, say, commerce and texts. So this particular code refers to that. So thus here there are nearly from A to Z, we have got nearly 80 different disciplines where those text category are systematically arranged to identify the major subjects to which text category they belong to. The next part is title of text annotation. This subject area, once it is identified, we need to give the title of the text. That is another important part. Suppose if you come across a book which contains, say, a 4 or 5 letter words as a title of the book. So it's very difficult to represent the entire title of the book in the text file name. So we need to identify a methodology, a system which should be quite elegant to understand in 2 ways. The machine would be able to track the material or the text preserved in this particular title, under this particular title. At the same time, the title should be maximally representing the full-fledged title of the book wherefrom the text is collected. So it is a very, very complex task. So as you know that here, so we have to be very much careful while as trying to generate an abbreviated form for the text file. So text file name should be made in such a way that it is understandable to both man and machine, and so that we can appropriate appropriate text file can be tracked. Here, let us give an example. Here we have given here, suppose as I have mentioned that the abbreviation KLBL code which has been used for a fixer known as Calvela. So for this purpose, for this case only, it is looks quite simplified, but it is not always the case, because in many cases you find the title of it very big and that has to be put within 4 characters. One has to use some kind of intelligence to make the abbreviated form. Next issue is the header file, a documentary safeguard. So as I mentioned that the header file is basically a storehouse of metadata. It will preserve and store the metadata. So normally in cases of a written text file, it happens in forms like name, gender, nationality, age of the author, year of first publication, name of the publisher, place of publication, type of the text, edition of the used for the corpus, and many other issues that are actually addressed here in the metadata file. So I can refer to you the table number here, table number 4, the layer of metadata information that has been tagged over here. I can read out. So in the header file there are some information. When this is a title, the title of the book is stored. Then it is language, subtitle, header file is language, and the particular language name included. In cases of genre, whenever we say whether it is a written text or spoken text, that is metified. Whenever we say text category, then we have to find out whether it's a literature or non-literary text. Then subcategory, we give the name of the fiction, and the text type is imaginative text. Source type is a book. Publication year 1978. Edition first. Volume single volume. Issue not applied because this is a book text not taken from the journal, so there is no question of issue. Name of the publisher which has published the book is included into it. Publication place where from the book is first published, that information is also located there. The name of the author is also given there. The gender of the author is also given. Age of the person author at that time, not exactly appropriate information can be retrieved from this part, but certain tentative age may be marked out as plus minus 50 plus, 60 plus, or 70 minus, or 30 plus. Okay, that kind of strategy can be adopted. The nationality of the writer is also identified. Total number of words available in the text, the total has been there in the file, is also identified. Then the text type, that is text is the sample text, original sample text, that is also included. So what we say that here that metadata actually identifies the broad subject domain, the type of text, and other information which are very much necessary for variety of linguistic studies and investigations. So while we are supplying the header file, which is carrying the maximum load of metadata, we have to be very much careful what kind of information we are going to present and in which mode, in which way that has to be presented. I've said also here in that in the discussions here also that this should be present. It is so much of involved related with technicalities that it may not be so interesting for the people of pure linguistics, particularly those people who are dealing with the area of language technology, dealing with data management, corpus data management, corpus data storage and access. They are more interested in these kinds of things. So here, if you look at the figure 3, you have given the whole range of metadata information as well as few sample sentences of the text which have been there straight up, and this is the methodology we have followed in TDL corpus. The basic argument is here is that the metadata or the extratextual information that we need to present in the corpus are of immense relevance for both man and machine. So it is not always that if you have a large collections of text files coming from various genres, various text types, various time, of various ages, of various locations. So you find that there are many well attested parameters based on which text data can be classified. Suppose we have collected texts of Bangla from West Bengal, from Bangladesh, from Bihar, from Tripura, from Jharkhand, from other parts of India as well as from outside. It is very much possible that we can have text from various ways to identify. Then we need to mark those text files in such a way that while you are searching appropriate texts, you can easily retrieve those texts from different places. Suppose I am interested to have those texts produced in Jharkhand, because I know that in the text which are produced in Jharkhand is not exactly the kind of text which is produced in West Bengal, just because my personal experience shows that in the text produced from Jharkhand and Delhi, a large chunk of Hindi words are actually merged with that. So what happens, because if I know that these texts are actually coming from those regions, we can do a cross-regional analysis of the texts to find out what kind of lexical load is, what kind of lexical distributions are loaded, what kind of neighboring language impact can be observed in those languages. So, or the text, suppose if we are talking about text collected from Bangla text taken from Bangladesh, then you can definitely find out that there are certain words, certain terms, certain phrases which are not normally used in the text produced in Kolkata or West Bengal. What I argue here is that if you have texts of different types, of different regions in the corpus, we need to classify them accordingly so that at the time of retrieval of appropriate files, at the time of retrieval of appropriate texts,